Hi friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. You may have seen in my previous video that I did a video featuring the bloom box from Fun Stamper's Journey, and I'm going to be doing another project using that same stamp set and a few pieces from the box. I pulled this beautiful blue piece of paper out and I'm going to be creating on it. And this is not following the instructions of the box. This is just a creation that I've made myself. So basically I cut that cardstock piece down to size and I put it in my MISTI and I'm just layering on all these really cute teacups and teapots, and I'm going to be doing some pattern stamping. Now I'm doing it mostly around the edges. My original thought was to leave the middle blank so that I could stamp the sentiment in there or do something, and I did go a little bit off that original plan. You'll see at the end what it looks like, but for now I'm just kind of arranging everything the way I wanted it to be. So before I put my cardstock in my MISTI, I did prep it with my embossing bag that just puts down a really thin layer of powder so that your embossing ink sticks only to where it's supposed to stick and that you get a cleaned embossed image. And so I use my Brutus Monroe embossing ink to ink up all of these stamps, and I'm just making sure I get it stamped down really well so I get a good impression. So you can see I have all of these little images stamped. I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of my Brutus Monroe Gilded Embossing Powder. I love this embossing powder. I think it's my all-time favorite. I use it on almost everything. It's just a very fine embossing powder. It gives you great results, and there is no wax filler. So a lot of embossing powders have sort of a wax filler, and it really serves no purpose. It's just there so that they can stretch the actual embossing powder a little bit farther. But Brutus Monroe has no wax filler, so you don't get, I've never gotten a burning smell from this embossing powder, and it shines so bright. There's no wax in there to dull down the shine. So you'll see how shiny this card ends up being, and I absolutely love it. But I'm just melting that embossing powder now. And now that I have one side sort of stamped, I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to emboss the rest of it. And I added some spoons in there as well. I just got a nice pattern going. So I'm also going to be picking out a few of my surface inks. I wanted some inks that coordinate. So I'm grabbing my Oz, and I'm going to grab my Cabana inks. Now Oz is sort of a turquoise. It's really a lot like the paper color, and that's why I picked it. I just wanted like an ombre effect around the outside. So I really sped up this portion of the video because it's just ink blending. But basically what I'm doing is picking up a little bit of that ink, and I'm just blending it onto my paper coming in from the edges. And I'm leaving the middle blank, and I'm just blending on color on the edges to get it going from a dark to a light. And it kind of gives a spotlight illusion when you're done blending, and I think it looked really fantastic with the gold and the blue and just that gradient of color. So I really loved how this ink blending technique turned out. Now when you are done ink blending over your embossed images, you'll see I'm going to take a rag and I'm just going to buff those images and just wipe off any of that ink that's sitting on top of my embossed images, and that's just going to make the embossing shine like it should because there's no ink sitting on top. So there's my finished card panel. Now I'm going to take some of the coordinating dies with this stamp set and cut them out. So I really love the fun color of the Fun Stamper's Journey dies because they're bright green, which is really fun, and they don't get lost in your messy desk very well, so you can see the bright colors. I'm just lining it up on a few other images that I stamped, and then I'm going to run it through my Platinum 6. Now I do want to note there is no coordinating die for that little plate that I have stamped, but it's such a small image and such an easy image to cut around that fussy cutting it takes absolutely no time at all. So I didn't really miss the die for the plate, but I did really like the coordinating dies for the teapot and the teacups. I'm always a sucker for coordinating dies because I love the look of fussy cut on your cards, but I don't like doing it. I like the finished product and not the process. So I really love the coordinating dies whenever I can get them. And you can see how well this Platinum 6 just cuts out with those dies. It's just a really nice clean cut. So I took a little bit more of that blue cardstock and I ink blended around the edges just like I did the bottom layer so that they both match, they both look like they coordinate. And now I just want to see, I'm laying out all my pieces just to see how it's going to look when I'm ready to adhere everything down. Now my thought was just to make a little cluster of these die cut images and stamp the sentiment on the bottom, and so that's what I end up doing. So I'm just trying to figure out where I want my teacup and my teapot to go and just make sure I have enough room for my sentiment. So I would suggest go ahead and lay out all of your elements if you're able to before you commit because I've ruined a good many cards just stamping things out before I map out where things are going to go. So it's always good to do a little prep work before you go ahead and continue on with your card. So I just want to show you here, I did some ink blending. So what you want to do if you do ink blending and then embossing is hit it with your heat tool and then just sprinkle on some embossing powder and see if it sticks or see if it comes off easily. So it was pretty much dry. I got a few stray pieces of embossing powder, but I think that's because I didn't prep it first with my embossing powder bag. So I just went ahead and I prepped that cardstock and then I went ahead with embossing my sentiment. So I really love this stamp set with all these cute little sentiments. I chose this one that says "You're just my cup of tea," and I thought it would be really fun to send this card off to family members or friends that love tea. So I'm going to go ahead and emboss that again using my Gilded Embossing Powder. So pretty much everything on this card is ink blended and embossed. So it's really getting a lot of bang for your buck with those two techniques. If you are doing a lot of embossing, I would also suggest making sure that your heat gun is fully heated up before you bring it to your paper, because it will melt the embossing powder a little bit faster and it will cut down on some of your cardstock warping. And so that's a really good thing to remember. So in order to adhere this little cardstock panel down, the one that has the sentiment on it, I'm just taking a little bit of this craft foam, and I have a variety of these craft foams in my stash in different colors. So I usually just try to pick a color that coordinates with whatever I'm doing. So that ended up to be this dark blue, but I really loved this dark blue behind the cardstock because it didn't stand out very well. It kind of really blended in. So I loved that. So I'm just taking my ATG and adding some of that tape adhesive to the back of my foam. And you'll see the tape adhesive, it will stick. You might have to help it along a little bit because it doesn't want to stick to the foam, but it will stick if you kind of finagle it a little bit. So once I have my adhesive on the back of my foam, I'm just going to layer it on top of my card. And I just want to center it right in the middle, just the way I had before when I planned out where everything was going to go. So just trying to make sure it's centered, and then I'm pushing it down to get that adhesive to really stick. Now for my teacup and my teapot and my little plate, I've used some not fun foam, I've used some foam adhesive just to pop it up a little bit and give it a little bit of dimension. I really love a little bit of dimension on my cards. I think it just adds a little bit of visual interest. So here's a look at the card. It's basically finished. You could leave it as is, but I thought I would just grab a few of the little sparkly sequins that are included in this bloom box and just add those as well. They're kind of a bright pink, but I thought the pink went really well with the blue, and I thought it was a nice little contrast. So I loved the addition of a few more sparkles, so I went ahead and added them. And I like to add my sequins with a little bit of glossy accents. And then I find that my Spellbinders Tool-in-One tool is really great for moving around those little sequins and getting them in the right spot. So that is the card for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will put a link down below to the blog post where there are more photos and description. And if you're interested in this bloom box, go ahead and check that out. I'll have a link below as well. Otherwise, thanks so much for stopping by, and I will catch you next time. Have a great day. Bye.